Hello, MCE Jets. This is Mrs. Becky Smith, and I am going to read to you a portion of Chapter 4 of The Secret Garden. It's a very long chapter. So today I'm not going to show you the words because my camera is not focusing. So here we go. Chapter 4 is called Martha. When she opened her eyes in the morning, it was because a young housemaid had come into her room to light the fire and was kneeling on the hearth rug, raking out the cinders noisily. Mary lay and watched her for a few moments, and then began to look about the room. She had never seen a room at all like it, and thought it curious and gloomy. The walls were covered with tapestry, with a forest scene embroidered on it. There were fantastical dressed people under the trees, and in the distance there was a glimpse of the turrets of a castle. There were hunters and horses and dogs and ladies on the tapestry. Mary felt as if she were in the forest with them, and in looking out of a deep window she could see a great climbing stretch of land which seemed to have no trees on it, and to look rather like an endless, dull, purplish sea. "What is that?" she said, pointing out the window. Martha, the young housemaid who had just risen to her feet, looked and pointed also. "That there?" she said. "Yes." "That's the moor," with a good-natured grin. "Does thou like it?" "No," answered Mary. "I hate it." "That's because thou art not used to it," Martha said, going back to her hearth. "Thou thinks it's too big and bare now, but thou will like it." "Do you?" inquired Mary. I do," answered Martha, cheerfully polishing away at the grate. "I just love it. It's none bare. It's covered with growing things, a sweet smell. It's fair lovely in spring and summer when the gorse and broom and heather's in flower. It smells of honey, and there's such a lot of fresh air, and the sky looks so high, and the bees and the skylarks make such a nice noise humming and singing. I wouldn't have lived anywhere else but for the moor. Mary listened to her with a grave, puzzled expression. The native servants she had been used to in India were not in the least like this. They were obsequious, and servile, and they did not presume to talk to their masters as if they were their equals. They made salams and called them protector of the poor and names of that sort. Indian servants were commanded to do things, not asked. It was not the custom to say please and thank you, and Mary had always slapped her ayah in the face when she was angry. She wondered a little what this girl would do if one slapped her in the face. She was round and rosy, good-natured looking creature, but she had a sturdy way which made Mary wonder if she might not even slap back, if the person who slapped her was only a little girl. "You are a strange servant," she said from her pillows, rather haughtily. Martha sat up on her heels, with her blacking brush in her hand, and laughed, without seeming the least out of temper. I know that," she said. "If there was a grand missus at Misselthwaite, I should never have been even one of the under housemaids. I might have been let to be the scullery maid, but I'd never have been let upstairs. I'm too common, and I talk too much Yorkshire. But this is a funny house for all it's so grand. Seems like there's neither master nor mistress except Mr. Pitcher and Mrs. Medlock. Mr. Craven, he won't be troubled by anything when he's here, and he's nearly always away. Mrs. Medlock gave me the place out of kindness. She told me she could never have it if Misselthwaite had been like this, like other big houses." "Are you going to be my servant?" Mary asked, still in her imperious little Indian way. Martha began to rub her grate again. "I'm Mrs. Medlock's servant," she said stoutly, "and she's Mr. Craven's, but I'm to do the housemaid's work up here and wait on you a bit. You won't need much waiting on." Who is going to dress me? Demanded Mary. Martha sat up on her heels again and stared. She spoke in broad Yorkshire in her amazement. Canna dress the sins, she said. What do you mean? I don't understand your language, said Mary. I forgot, Martha said. Mrs. Medlock told me I'd have to be careful or you wouldn't know what I was saying. I mean, can't you put on your clothes yourself? No, answered Mary quite indignantly. I never did in my life. My ayah dressed me, of course. Well, said Martha, evidently not in the least aware that she was impudent, it's time they should learn. They cannot begin younger. It'll do thee good to wait on the sin a bit. My mother always said she couldn't see why grand people's children didn't turn out fair fools. What with nurses and being watched and dressed and took out to walks as if they was puppies. It is different in India, said Mrs. Mary disdainfully. She could scarcely stand this, but Martha was not at all crushed. I can see it's different, she answered almost sympathetically. I dare say it's because there's such a lot of natives there instead of respectable English people. When I heard you was coming from India, I thought you was a native too. Mary sat up in bed, furious. What? She said. What? You thought I was a native? You daughter of a pig. Martha stared and looked hot. Who are you calling names? She said. You needn't be so vexed. That's not the way for a young lady to talk. I've nothing against the natives. When you read about them in tracts, they're always very religious. You always read as the natives a man and a brother. I've never seen a native, and I was very pleased to think I was going to see one close. When I came in to light the fire this morning, I crept up to your bed and pulled the cover back careful to look at you. And there you was, disappointedly. No more darker than me. For all you're just very yellow. Mary did not even try to control her rage and humiliation. You thought I was a native. You dared. You don't know anything about natives. They are not people, they're servants who must salaam to you. You know nothing about India. You know nothing about anything. She was in such a rage and felt so helpless before the girl's simple stare, and somehow she suddenly felt so horribly lonely and far away from everything she understood and which understood her, that she threw herself face downward on the pillows and burst into passionate sobbing. She sobbed so unrestrainedly that good-natured Yorkshire Martha was a little frightened and quite sorry for her. She went to the bed and bent over her. You mustn't cry like that there, she begged. You mustn't for sure. I didn't know you'd be vexed. I don't know anything about anything. Just like you said. I beg your pardon, miss. Do stop crying. There was something comforting and really friendly in her strange Yorkshire speech and sturdy way, which had a good effect on Mary. She gradually ceased crying and became quiet. Martha looked relieved. This is where I'm going to stop, and then I'll start back in a minute. Chapter 4 continues.